Welcome to Saga Sessions, a show where we explore, analyze, and discuss our favorite stories. I am very excited to be joined today by my friend Nick. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me, Colin. I'm very excited as well.
Okay, so tell us, Nick, what is your favorite movie franchise?
Definitely Indiana Jones has been pretty much since I could ever watch movies. It's just always been with me.
So you are the perfect person to have on Saga Sessions today.
I certainly hope so.
To talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first installment in the Indiana Jones franchise. Nick, do you know what the original name of the character was?
I do. Indiana Smith.
Indiana Smith, that's right. George Lucas.
And you know how he got the name of the Indiana?
Tell us.
So he had a enormous dog, can't remember the name or the breed, and that name was Indiana, which was also the inspiration for Chewbacca, because he said he would have him sitting in the front seat of his car and look over and just this enormous dog sitting there and said, well, that's a movie character right there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, George Lucas apparently started work on Indiana Jones before he began writing Star Wars. So, technically, the character of Indiana Jones is older than Luke Skywalker, at least in George Lucas's head. I believe he began the story with filmmaker Philip Kaufman. Lucas and Philip Kaufman were working on a story for Indiana Jones, or pardon me, Indiana Smith at the time. But then Philip Kaufman had to leave the project, so George Lucas said, okay, I'm just going to put this idea on the shelf and work on my space movie, which turned out to be Star Wars. After the success of Star Wars, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg both happened to be on vacation in Maui together. And they met up on the beach. They were building a sandcastle, and Spielberg said to Lucas, you know, George, I really want to direct a James Bond film. And George Lucas said, I have an even better idea for you. And the rest is history.
Pulls out that old script that he said was building dust for 10 years, right?
Right.
I think he had it sitting up for a while, and sure enough, I mean, that's what essentially it is just a James Bond movie, a little bit more grounded, right?
Mm-hmm. A little more grounded in reality, no gadgets, just an earthy archaeologist on a mission. Now, real quick, it was Steven Spielberg's idea to get rid of the name Smith and switch it to Jones. That was the one thing he wanted changed.
And now we have one of the coolest names in cinema history.
That we do.
So obviously, Harrison Ford kind of embodies the entire role of Indiana Jones. He's the face of the entire franchise, but he's also just one of the greatest living actors we have ever had. Kind of the middle point of old Hollywood breaking into the modern new generation of cinema, right? You had all those new fancy directors like Martin Scorsese and Coppola and Spielberg all coming in the 70s. Well, Harrison Ford was one of the actors that kind of helped break them through. And he was, for some reason, hard to believe, not the first pick for Indiana Jones. That was, well, there was a handful of people, I guess, but Tom Selleck was kind of the big runner-up. And then he had to go make a silly little TV show that no one's probably ever heard of anymore instead of Indiana Jones.
Magnum P.I.
That's right. Which was obviously a very good career move for him, but I think even more so for the franchise of Indiana Jones, because then we got Harrison Ford himself.
Now tell us why George Lucas didn't want to cast Harrison Ford initially.
He said he did not want a Marty and Bob situation, which is referencing Martin Scorsese, the filmmaker, and the actor that he always went back to and still does, just released Killers of the Flower Moon, Robert De Niro. And he didn't want to have that one actor that was in every single movie of his. And
because he was in American Graffiti.
He had a small part in American Graffiti. Right. And then he was even in the sequel to American Graffiti, which...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Is an uncredited cameo, which I don't know anybody who's ever seen the sequel. I certainly have not.
And then he didn't even want to cast him in Star Wars because he had the same mindset of, oh, I've used Harrison before, I don't want to cast him. But then ultimately he did cast him. And then he went through the same process again when he was coming up with Indiana Jones. So Harrison Ford is just a really lucky guy.
George Lucas, I've always heard, he's a great ideas guy, not the best director, but he's really good at bringing people together.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, he brought Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, brought all these guys together and just made just this masterpiece.
Now, let's go back real quick to Tom Selleck. You can actually watch a portion of his audition tape as Indiana Jones. It's the scene in the bar in Nepal. Just go onto YouTube and look up Tom Selleck audition tape, Indiana Jones, something along those lines. You'll be able to find it. It's interesting.
You can also find the Marion audition as well, Karen Allen.
Excellent.
And she didn't do it with Tom Selleck. She did it with one of the other actors that was scheduled for it. But it's the same thing where it was just lined up. I will say, if Tom Selleck did the movie, I think, weirdly enough, it would have fit more if it was named Indiana Smith instead of Indiana Jones.
I'm glad you said that.
I don't know why. It just seems to click a little bit more for me that way.
Yeah, so we got Harrison Ford, and thank goodness for that, because who else can play Indiana Jones? I can't imagine anybody else in that role.
I mean, this was just the beginning of the 80s, Raiders of the Lost Ark. He pretty much ruled the 80s, ruled the 90s, still acting today. He's had one massive career, and he's obviously a huge box office draw. We saw it with the newest Indiana Jones. He still is. He's moving into TV now. He's just got the career to work for.
All right, time to analyze the film. Nick, in your opinion, why is Raiders of the Lost Ark still popular today?
So, like I said, this was the franchise that I grew up with. I know we had talked about this a little bit before. I grew up with this franchise. My brother and I, as long as we could watch movies, this was always prevalent. And, I was born 20 years after the movie even came out. But I think it's still very relevant today. I think a lot of it is just the excitement of the movie and the classic nostalgia. But, any movie can really have that. I will say, I think the biggest thing this movie had going for it was its pacing and its tone.
Yes.
That's one thing that, you want to have a great movie, but you always forget the tone of it and how it moves along. There's literally just set piece after set piece, just, nothing slowing down, doesn't give you a chance to breathe. When there's the exposition, the exposition is still very not feeling like it's dumping on you. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think all the movies still carried that through. I think it's still tough for movies to do that today, so looking back on a movie, even if it's from the 80s like this, is, it's what just helps keep it hold up.
Do you think this film inspired a genre, or did it already fit into a pre-existing genre?
Well, I know that we mentioned that it's very much Spielberg wanted to make James Bond, right? And there is some James Bond aspect to it. There's a lot of Western aspect to it. It's very much an adventure movie. Humphrey Bogart made movies like this back in the 40s and 50s. But since, now every movie that tries to be an adventure movie is just trying to copy Indiana Jones. As much as Indiana Jones took all the aspects of all these other movies, everything's just trying to copy that now.
It's the perfect blueprint.
It is. It's a flawless movie, and you want to make an adventure movie about archaeology, it's great. Funny enough, actually, every time I watch these older movies from the 40s and 50s, I always think about, is this partially what George Lucas was looking at? And there was one movie I watched called Plunder in the Sun, starring Glenn Ford, and it was from 46, and he's literally playing an archaeologist who is trying to get this map of some sort or some kind of treasure, and he's just a well-dressed guy, and there's these almost German type guys chasing him. It's very much just it seems like it would be a remake. Indiana Jones would be a remake, but they are very different movies at the same time. So it's kind of cool to see where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Okay, we're going to look over the film now. Give it our review. With that, Nick, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, like we've just been talking about, this I think is an absolute masterclass of watching movies, making movies. I think that it's really tough for an entire franchise to be as good as this. And having a first movie like this is just absolutely killer. I mean, obviously everybody at the time knew how good this was too. It won 5 Oscars.
Do you know which Oscars?
It was a lot of technical Oscars, so I think it was visuals, sound. I know that it got nominated for Best Picture, but it didn't win. That was Chariots of Fire, which is a bad take today, that would be the winner. I think John Williams got nominated but didn't win. One of his 58 nominations.
Oh my gosh, that man, so prolific. So prolific.
Just got nominated for Dial of Destiny.
That's right, he did.
He has the most Oscar nominations known to any person.
And I think he got nominated for each Star Wars sequel film, too. The best part of the sequel trilogy, arguably, was John Williams' 3 scores. But that's a video for another time.
Yeah, his music, I mean, obviously is so famous and prolific to this franchise. I think it would be really tough to watch a movie like this and not have that soundtrack. And obviously he's another aspect of George Lucas just knowing who to hire, who to have for the movie. He knows how to build the music with the tension. He knows where to relieve the tension. It's just great stuff. It's really some of the best composing you can ever see in a movie.
One of the best main themes, I think, in the history of cinema.
Absolutely.
Dun, 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 dun.
I also find it very interesting if you remember watching the first scene of Indiana Jones, of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which this is the only one that's not technically called Indiana Jones.
That's right. They added the Indiana Jones bit much later.
1995 was when they added it in.
95, okay.
But the intro I just love. And I love that obviously Steven Spielberg had this great mind to invent new movies and how to make these movies, and he wanted to literally start off the movie by filming a mountain that looked like the Paramount Mountain, right?
Right,
which was great, and it's very famous for the whole franchise now. We see it in every movie, or every Indiana Jones movie. But I find it so interesting, the intro to Indiana Jones on screen is almost like a villainous intro. You remember this?
I do. He's kind of shadowed.
He's got the shadow on him. He's got John Williams' score booming into the microphone, but it's really a dark theme.
Yeah, it's almost like bellicose music.
Yeah, exactly. And if you had no idea what this movie was, you would think that he's the villain of the movie. And I guess, I don't know if I would technically consider him a hero, certainly not in the prequel, Temple of Doom. He's very more of a nasty guy in that when you look at it. But this intro is interesting because he goes down as one of the best heroes in cinema, and really he wasn't even introduced that way.
That's a good point, and I've never thought about it before, because the first person we're introduced to, I think, is Doc Ock from Spider-Man.
Alfred Molina.
It
was one of his first roles.
That's right. He had been doing theater for a long time, and he found himself on the set of Indiana Jones. And,
he's always been a very talented actor. I mean, he's a very talented theater actor, and he's very articulate with how he speaks and how he can present himself. And even in just, what has he got, 4 minutes of screen time? Not even. He just does great.
What is it? One of them tries to shoot Indiana Jones or something?
Yeah, I guess he kind of just pulls his revolver out on him. I don't know what the intention really was. I don't know if he was just trying to get the map or if he was just going to shoot him. But of course, Indiana Jones, he's a smart guy.
Right.
He catches him with the whip real early.
Out comes the bullwhip.
Yep. And it's the first time we see that. And then this is also, even when I was really young, it was the first time I recognized the sound design for this movie is incredible. You listen when he does the bullwhip, which obviously he learned how to use a real bullwhip. But the crack of it is just so loud, and it is so in your face, like this is what he's doing. And then the gun falls in the water and the gun goes off and you hear that famous gunshot from the Indiana Jones movies, which I just love that sound every time. They just do it. They do it different in that movie.
Even though that's not the sound a revolver would make necessarily, but
correct.
It's still iconic.
Just the sound design of that is just great. Everything in that sound design, when that boulder is rolling down, obviously Spielberg's very famous for knowing how to pick good sound design, looking at Jurassic Park and stuff like that.
Right.
It's always been very famous on how he does that, but that was one big thing I took away from the intro again, was that sound is just great.
You know what's really really cool about that boulder sound? This is a fun fact. If you remember in Star Wars The Force Awakens, when Harrison Ford makes his long-awaited return as Han Solo, there's that whole scene where they're running through the ship and they're being chased by those weird aliens called Rathtars. And there's a moment where one of the Rathtars starts rolling down the hall, and Harrison Ford takes off running, and they actually reused the rolling boulder sound effect for that shot in The Force Awakens. And so yeah, check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's like, oh, okay. That's familiar.
For some reason did not clock that when I saw that movie. But
I didn't notice it, but then when I read about it, I went back and looked, and I was like, it is there.
Yeah. I need to go rewatch it and just see it for that scene again.
Yeah, it's funny. It's cool, but it's funny that they went ahead and did that. But yeah, great intro. Great intro to the character.
So, I mean, obviously, the intro continues with him going into the Temple of the Golden Idol, right?
Right.
He makes his way in. So many just practical stunts. The big boulder, the entire temple falling apart. Get, all the arrows, the famous whip going across that pathway there. All of it's great.
And the iconic scene with, it's been mimicked now so many times, but the iconic scene with the idol on the stand, the bag of dirt or sand, whatever it is, and
grabs the sand from the front of the temple.
Yeah, the whole switcheroo thing. Iconic scene. It's beautiful. And I love watching that.
And Alfred Molina's reaction shot to him getting with all the tension building, and then you see Alfred Molina moving his fingers and just in awe of what's happening.
Yep.
And you realize, I'm Alfred Molina in this movie right now. I'm just sitting here watching what's happening with my mouth wide open, not understanding exactly what's going to happen, and just in awe of everything happening.
Right.
And even after 30 rewatches, I'm still that way. I'm still thinking about it that way, where I'm watching it just stunned.
We are introduced to Belloc at the end of the prologue. Great villain.
One of the best movie villains in cinema, I think.
Yeah, hard to argue with that, for sure. He has that moment where he does that evil laugh when he's holding up the idol, and then it cuts away to Indy running through the jungle, and you still hear the laugh in the background. So iconic. And then we have the introduction of the Indiana Jones theme for the first time when he goes flying into the river.
I love watching him run through that field when the native tribe is chasing him, because you can see him running and just this smoke of dust coming off his back.
Right.
Because he just rolled through the entire temple and it's just coming off him and it's just leaving it in the back, and it's just so funny to see. It's like little details like that are just so fun in the movie.
Yeah, the details, or I should say the attention to detail, it really does make you feel like you're watching almost like a documentary or like a reality show. You feel like Harrison Ford has actually been, exploring an ancient temple. He's been rolling through the dirt. He's been running from a rolling boulder.
And it's amazing because almost the entire thing was made on a set.
Right.
On the set where they shot Star Wars, actually. Empire Strikes Back, I believe.
Elstree Studios?
Yep. That's
Okay.
it. And they wanted to shoot it somewhere else, and George Lucas said, we just had so much good luck on this set with the Star Wars movies, we just keep shooting on there.
That's right, Pinewood Studios. Spielberg wanted Pinewood Studios, but Lucas said, nope, let's stick to Elstree. That's right, I forgot all about that.
But yeah, if you look at the construction they did for those sets, it is massive. I mean, they went all out to build these sets, and it's really just a full immersive location setting that they make. And that goes through not just the temple at the beginning, but pretty much everything throughout the rest of the movie.
Right.
I did find out today that the submarine actually is the submarine used from Das Boot. You know that movie?
No way. I mean, yeah, I've never seen the film, but I'm familiar with
Das
the
Boot
film.
is an incredible war film. But apparently they hadn't made it yet, but they got the submarine to, I think they, I don't remember if it was exactly a actual special effect or if it was one of the real submarines, but it was the one used for Das Boot, and they said, hey, they're just filming it right up the street. Let's go see if we can get it, and they ended up taking it for a couple shots and making their own of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, we get introduced to Jock.
Start up the plane, Jock! Start the plane!
Whatever happened to him? He should have been in every single movie.
Yeah.
Is he even referenced again?
I don't think so. Memorable character, though. Memorable character.
He's great.
He's tied to the introduction to Indy's greatest fear in life.
That's right. And
snakes.
And Indy has clearly always, I think through all his movies, has been pretty well known for having good sidekicks.
Right.
Short Round, his dad. You get Marion, you get Kate Capshaw. No one ever talks about Jock anymore, though.
He's kind of a forgotten character.
He deserves better.
Oh, that's just my pet snake, Reggie. Oh, man. I hate snakes. I hate them.
I know, they set the groundwork pretty early for that.
They did. They wanted you to know immediately, this guy does not like snakes. Yeah, so should we talk about Marion a little bit?
Yeah, Karen Allen.
Karen Allen, yeah.
She was cast because of her role in Animal House. I don't know if you saw that.
Never seen Animal House.
Hilarious movie. It still holds up today. It's John Landis and John Belushi, and it's just a great comedy, but she plays one of the side characters, or I guess she's like the main girl in the movie.
The female lead.
She has the love interest with the main character, and she was wonderful in that, and then, the year before this, she's in the William Friedkin film Cruising, which is a very, very neo-noir style crime movie starring Al Pacino, and then she does this role, which obviously just cements her as one of the best.
Right.
Her introduction's amazing. I mean,
the drinking game.
How do you beat that? How do you beat the drinking game? Out drinking a 350-pound person and still cleaning up the kitchen right after.
Right. Oh yeah, very memorable scene.
Yeah, so this is the scene of where all the audition tapes came from, where she did her audition tape for this scene. Tom Selleck did this scene for the audition tape as well.
Right.
We get some backstory of her and Indiana Jones's relationship. We forgot to mention Brody.
Denholm Elliott.
That's right. Wonderful actor. He's been around for years and years and years before Indiana Jones. And this movie, he's very different from when he appears in the third movie. I don't know if
very different.
It's a very big contrast. He's very much the straight man in this movie. He's, just kind of here for exposition, delivering a little bit of this and that here and there. And then by the third movie, he's a goofball not knowing how to ride a horse straight. It's very funny change in them.
Yeah, it's funny how some characters can just evolve over the course of a few films as the screenwriters and the director want to take it in a different direction. But
have you seen him in many other movies. I remember.
No.
I remember I had not seen him in hardly anything. I just knew him as Brody. There was one Woody Allen movie he was in that I saw. I think it was September he was in. But other than I know I've seen him probably in a handful of movies now, but to me he's always just been Brody.
The only thing I know him from, Indiana Jones. He's very much like a father figure in the first film, I think. Obviously, we haven't been introduced to Indy's dad yet, so for this first film, Brody kind of takes on that role and gives him counsel before he embarks on the adventure to reclaim the Ark. And I think it's Brody, actually, who warns him to not underestimate the Ark.
And that's when he says that it's all just a fairy tale.
Right.
Also, can we say when they show him teaching his class, and that's when they first introduce Brody, Dumbhome Elliott, there's so many funny gags in that.
Right.
There's obviously, he's misspelling words on the chalkboard, and people start laughing at him. Is he really? Yeah, he doesn't know how to spell Neolithic. And he starts having to spell it out himself in front of everyone. Obviously the eyeball or the eyelids where it says spelled love you
yep.
The girl. And then my favorite part of it is when the bell rings and they're leaving and you see obviously all the girls are gushing over him, and then you see this one young guy in the class and he just has an apple for the teacher like they used to do, and he's clearly just so upset because all the girls are getting his attention, and he just stumbles by and just pops the apple on the table and just walks out in defeat, of which Brody then chooses to eat the apple. And it's just such a fun, when you know it's there, it's so funny. It's such a funny delivery.
I gotta keep an eye out for it the next time I watch the film.
But literally that's an exposition scene, and it's just so great. That's how good the whole movie is.
Beautiful.
You don't need all this action. Just that is hilarious. After they introduce Marion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also get introduced to the Nazis, the big bads of the movie.
Right.
Just like in the third movie when they introduce the Nazis in that movie, and he just looks at the female lead of that movie and says, "Nazis. I hate these guys." Just like he hates snakes and rats. But yeah, they're pretty much the big bad of the movie. Kind of interesting to think how close in history that was to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
That was only 30, 40 years off from the end of the
film
war.
came out in, was it
81?
Yeah, okay, 81.
And so it was relatively close history to involve those guys, and like how even then it was obviously they were just the big bad guys of the world. Who better to pick for a historical archaeological movie about treasure hunting, you know?
Right.
Big bad guys. I mean, can we just say, on rewatch today, that entire sequence in the bar is just excellent.
Oh, yeah.
The whole shootout, all the fire, that they were doing it on that set, and they lit the entire set on fire with pipes. They had, I guess they had piping go through that would start controlled fires, and they pretty much had to burn the entire thing down by the end of it.
Oh, man. Okay.
But it's just such a good shootout. It's,
the sound effects are marvelous in that scene.
That's when Indy shoots his gun for the first time. That's also one of my favorite shots of the whole movie is when Indy comes back to meet Marion for the first time, and you see his silhouette on the wall, and it's just so iconic.
Hello, Marion. Yep.
You just see his hat, and you know that he's got his broad shoulders. It's such a good look to him, and it just suits the character. So then after that, right, we pretty much get the real adventure going.
The real adventure begins in Egypt.
That's right, and we meet Sala.
Sala. Who can forget Sala? Good old John Rhys-Davies. What a great, memorable actor.
I guess he's got some pretty good screen time in there, like good lengthy screen time, but being able to be such a memorable presence against Harrison Ford is very powerful to a character.
It is.
And he does it very well, and he's very funny. He brings a lot of humor to the role.
And they reused him again in The Last Crusade and in The Dial of Destiny. He's that popular.
Which, maybe he shouldn't have made that return.
Nick has some thoughts about this.
But he was great in Last Crusade for sure. He was a lot of fun in there.
Okay, so we have some material now for our eventual Dial of Destiny discussion.
Got to go through all of them.
I want to hear about this, but yeah, we'll have to slowly work our way there. Stay tuned. But I think one of the unsung heroes of the film is actually Sala's family, his wife and kids. The kids actually save Indy's life at one point.
They do. They save him from Belloc and all the Nazis in the bar, I guess.
Okay, so Nick and I have not prepped this part of the episode, but I can guarantee he knows the story behind it. Talk about the scene with the warrior and his scimitar and Indy and the gun.
Very famous. Very famous. I guess the entire cast of the movie was all eating local food. Everybody got violently food poisoned, except for director Steven Spielberg. He had all his SpaghettiOs. He had all his canned SpaghettiOs from England. But this action sequence comes up, and the stuntman of Harrison Ford's essentially practiced for a few weeks to get this entire thing down. Harrison shows up on set violently ill. He's about to have this enormous sword fight with one of the big heavies, one of the random heavies of the movie. He's so sick that day on set that he just asks, "Can I just shoot the guy?" And it plays as one of the funniest bits in any movie. You see the whole buildup of this guy doing sword tricks, and everyone's standing around making a big arena of this. And Harrison Ford just, I think, just like he does, he was grumpy and didn't want to do it and just shot him. I guess I was disappointed when I first saw it, but then now...
It is a little disappointing,
But now I'm excited just to see him not have that fight. That's what's exciting now. It's so funny.
It's something to look forward to while you're watching the film.
Very much so. And, there's so many gags like that where you have these little iconic characters just pop up, like the guy with the eye patch or the two stooges who pretty much give him the whole exposition of the Ark, or this guy. They just show up and they're iconic for 2 minutes on screen and then they're gone. And it's great.
I know we're going a little bit out of sequence here, but I love those two men who are in the beginning and the end of the film. They have one of my, or I forget which one of them says the line, but it's one of my favorite lines in cinema history. We have top men working on it.
Top men.
Top men.
So good. Great way to end the movie.
Yes. But back to the middle of the movie. Marion gets captured in a rather fantastic chase sequence through the streets of Cairo.
Another very much Charlie Chaplin-esque slapstick type of thing. Like they're changing around baskets and you don't know where she is, and then he has to start knocking baskets down, and it feels very reminiscent of just 30s silent era comedy, 20s and 30s. It's very funny. And it works. It's a great chase sequence, all ending in what we assume is her demise.
The explosion in the truck, right?
Which, keep in mind, everything in this movie is practical, and it just looks beautiful.
It does. It does.
Killer.
We spoke about Belloc briefly, but when you think of the character of Belloc, what scene comes to mind first? Because for me, it's the scene where he and Indy are in that bar when he says to Indy, "I am a shadowy reflection of you," and then he holds up that was it like a pocket watch or something? And
yeah, that's right. He says you can buy this in the street for $10. I bury it for 3,000 years and it's priceless.
And it becomes priceless. Yeah,
he's got a lot of great lines in this movie.
Yeah,
and you think about it, his intro, he literally says to Indiana Jones, he says, "You see, once again, I've proven that there is nothing you can obtain that I cannot take away."
Yes,
just an offhand line that's just killer. Works all the time.
Shout out to Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the script. He wrote some fantastic dialogue, as we were just talking about in regards to Belloc, the villain.
But yeah, so Belloc, just anytime he's on screen, he's always cooking.
So there's no particular scene for you?
The intro scene has always been really impactful to me about seeing him show up. Also, infamously, the fly hitting his face, sitting on his face, crawling into his mouth.
That's right.
That's another great scene. The special effect of his head blowing up. I mean, it really is. Everything in there is he doesn't miss. That's a great scene. Him and Belloc sitting there. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, wow. That one line that Indiana Jones gives when he's clearly just very angry. He thinks Marion's dead. Obviously, he despises Belloc, and he just says, "You want to open the Ark and meet God? Well, let's go meet him together."
That's right. You want
so
to talk
good
to God? I got nothing better to do.
Yeah, so good.
Yep.
It's just the writing is spot on with it.
Right. So moving the story along, what? Actually, it's not one of my favorite shots. It might be my favorite shot in the whole movie, because you've all seen the film, I hope. Indiana Jones decides to figure out where the Well of Souls is located. He finds the Staff of Ra. He gets the medallion. He goes down. He does the whole thing with the light. And figures out, the location. He and Sala decide to go dig for it. And the best shot in the whole movie, in my opinion, is the sunset shot where it's a silhouette of Harrison Ford putting on his hat while the workmen around him are digging and singing. That's just my favorite shot in possibly any of the 5 Indiana Jones films. To me, that's just an iconic shot. Do you know what shot I'm talking about?
I do, and I agree. I think it's one of the best shots, pretty much any movie that Spielberg's made. It very much calls back to my 4th favorite movie of all time, called The Night of the Hunter from 1955, starring Robert Mitchum, and there's a scene of him on a horse, and he's going across a hill. And it's a wide shot from a barn. And he's singing. It's clearly a set, but you can see it's a hill. And he's got a cowboy hat on, and he's riding a horse, and it's just the silhouette of that. And I can imagine someone like Spielberg, who's a scholar, who I'm sure have seen The Night of the Hunter, probably took a lot of inspiration from that, too, to do a lot of the silhouettes in this movie, because there's a good handful in there. Probably throughout the entire series there is. And I could be dead wrong, but I always get reminded of that when I see that scene.
Bring us back into the film. We get to see Indy's fear of snakes, like, up close and personal.
Well, I think we skipped a part.
Oh, did we?
So they start digging, and this is when what was explained earlier in the film with the 2 government guys about the staff and the light hitting properly, and it can lead you.
Yes.
We find out that obviously the Nazis are digging.
They're digging in the wrong place. Right.
And Indy and Sala figure out where to go. There's also another great gag here. It's just full of great gags where 2 of the Nazis walk up and start, I guess, interrogating Sala when Indy's down in the hole.
And he's just playing dumb.
And Sala kind of walks over. We don't see a single thing that happens. All we see is the Nazi flag tied up with a bunch of rope that falls down because the rope got away. And, when I first watched it, I was just like, oh, they got Sala. But no, I think Sala just got them. And it's very funny and it's very quick. And it works. It's just, again, another little thing that's just so funny in the movie.
Yeah, Indy gets the flag, or he receives the rope made of the flag, and he's like, "What is this?"
But obviously, more importantly in this scene, he figures out with the staff, he figures out exactly where the Ark is based on the layout that they have for, I guess, the area, right?
Right. Yep.
So then him and Sala go, and this is where the snakes come in.
That's right. Actually, this is where my favorite shot comes in. I was getting ahead of myself before, but yeah, they dig. He and Sala decide to go down, but he runs into some trouble because his greatest fear awaits him down below. And we have the famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, snake scene. I'm glad I didn't have to be around those snakes. Shout out to Harrison Ford. I don't know if he has a fear of snakes like his character does, but he had to get real close to some snakes.
Him and Spielberg have always said that they never had an issue with snakes, but in such massive bulk in this movie, Spielberg said he thought he was going to be sick. How many snakes he saw just getting pulled out of bags.
I can see it.
And obviously, it's very famously known that they got about 2,000 snakes, and they realized this is not even close to enough. And they needed to have 7,000 more snakes added into the
7,000 more?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So they had 9,000 snakes on the set, and I think a handful of them were probably props. I think was there the thing about some of them were lizards? Not actually snakes.
I've never heard of this, but this is
I
really
think
interesting.
They really had to like pull the bottom of the barrel to get like 9,000 snakes, but it still looks great.
Okay.
And then
awesome.
they did bring in real cobras.
Yeah, the cobra that Indy sees down in the Well of Souls. Is it true that there was, I guess it has to be true for safety reasons, there's a pane of glass or plexiglass in front of him and the snake?
And if you watch close enough, and it's the only thing from this movie that when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I can see it. And I wasn't, I was a little thrown off by it, where you can see a little, I guess, reflection in the glass.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that.
Yeah, but essentially they just had like this big box, and they would put all the sand in there, and they had the cobra in there, and when he would fall, he would literally just hit, and the snake would be able to look right at him, but it wouldn't. He wouldn't be in any danger.
That's good.
They did say at one point the cobra, I guess one of the cobras that were on set flung its head in a certain way and spat out venom.
Ooh.
And it just covered the entire glass, and they were saying like, wow, that put everybody on their toes. Like, they're not messing around. Like, this is the real deal.
So story-wise, they get the Ark of the Covenant, and how did they get it out of the Well of Souls again? They like lift it up with rope?
I think they hoisted it out, with rope. I guess they still had their other guys with them, right? The ones that were digging? I think so.
Yeah. It is called the Well of Souls, right?
It is.
I'm getting that correct? Okay, good.
See, I thought this was where your favorite shot would come in, where you see R2-D2 and C-3PO on the side of that.
Oh, they're in there?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, there's when they're Sala and Indy are lifting up the actual Ark of the Covenant from, I guess, the little tomb it was in. You can see all these hieroglyphics on the sides and different things like that. And one of them is literally just a little etching of R2-D2 and C-3PO standing there. It's very funny.
No idea.
It's very funny. And obviously, George Lucas wrote the movie, so it was very intentional that it was on there.
Wow. Okay. I got to look for that now. I had no idea that was a thing, but that's awesome. That's really, really, really awesome.
So then Sala gets out of the Well of Souls. The Ark of the Covenant's out, and Belloc shows up. Great.
Yeah, that's a really, really good time for Indy. At least he gets Marion back, though.
Yeah, which I think is a great sequence when she falls into the hole. You see Belloc, who in the previous scene we saw a type of bonding between them. Right? They had some drinks.
Right. They were drinking together.
Some food. She was going to try and run away, and he said that it's 3 weeks each direction in this desert, so you might as well sit down and eat. And they have some drinks, and she tries on a dress. She pulls a knife on him, and they just continue to laugh. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone laugh as much as they did drunk. I don't know if that's... I think they definitely were having some acting techniques going on in there.
Right.
So when she gets thrown into the Well of Souls...
Oh, real quick before we move on,
Sure.
I'm sorry to cut in, but we can't neglect the famous gag in that drinking scene.
Yes, and that was going to be another... That's right. Another little gag that just shows up, and it's so funny, where you think... what's his name in the movie again? I can't remember.
I can never remember his name.
He's the one that's dressed all in black, the Nazi who shows up and...
As a kid, I always called him Mole Man because he reminded me of Hans Mole Man from The Simpsons.
That's funny. That's really funny. Well, he's, I guess, one of Hitler's right-hand men, I suppose you could consider him.
Safe to say, yeah.
Or one of his head archaeologists. And he shows up, and pulls out this what looks like nunchucks essentially.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's about to do some damage with them, and then it turns out to just be a coat hanger.
Yeah.
Which is so funny.
Amazing.
So yeah, Marion gets thrown into the hole. We get an excellent action sequence of them having to escape, where they obviously can't go up, but Indy sees all the holes on the wall where snakes are coming through and realizes, I can get my way through the wall instead of going up.
But we also have that little like horror scene, right? Where we have Marion like stuck in the middle of all these mummies and skeletons, and there's snakes like stuck in her hair, and
that's right.
Yeah, very, very horrific scene. Actually, it terrified me as a child.
Very much so.
You have that one shot of the skeleton, or it's almost like a mummy, but
I would call it a mummy.
Yeah, the mummy in front of her, and there's this giant snake going through its mouth.
Oh, the python.
The python, yeah.
That is horrific. That really is.
It's very scary.
Yeah, and it's still, even today when I watched it, I was just like, good Lord, that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And you know it's a real snake, and it's just gross.
Yes.
I'm not even afraid of snakes. I don't really have that type of fear. Definitely seeing them in bunches like that, I can tell how someone might get sick from that.
Yeah, I can totally see that, and I don't blame Steven Spielberg one bit. So tell us about your favorite 20 minutes of the film.
So, like we were saying, this whole movie is literally just one by one, just action set piece. There's no hesitation in what the tone is, what the pacing is of the whole movie.
Right.
Essentially, they escape the Well of Souls. They get out, and you see they're pushing this enormous brick out. I've always loved that scene where he pushes the big brick out, he looks out, and there's the helicopter where the Nazis are pretty much fueling up their or I guess it's a plane. It's not a helicopter.
Yeah, it's a plane. Yep.
And they're fueling it up. I don't think they're not putting the Ark on there.
No, the Ark gets put on a truck.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the actual chase sequence is probably my favorite of the movie.
But you were thinking that was a helicopter because of what happens to the big strong guy. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So he has this hand-to-hand combat scene with this enormous guy who's very much old-fashioned tough guy. He looks like Robert Mitchum from if Robert Mitchum was bald. Like, he's got this big, broad chest. He's not particularly muscular, but he's also not particularly too fat. He's just kind of like big, really big guy.
Yeah.
And they have this excellent hand-to-hand fight sequence. Marion gets trapped in the plane. You see this trail of gas start flowing after a bullet hits the gas tank. And all of a sudden a fire takes place, and it's pretty much a race for time to get Marion out, for Indy to beat this Nazi. And very famously, the Nazi gets
chopped up
by the propeller. Very gory.
Yeah, you get
very
you
gory.
get the blood splatter.
Yeah,
it's yeah.
And it just it's so contrasting over the color of the entire movie. You get, obviously this bright crimson red showing up on top of these just greens and, the whites on the color. And it's so jarring to see, and it stands out so much. And obviously Indy has blood dripping down his face from the fight sequence. Definitely not a PG movie if it was made today.
No.
Absolutely not. So then they get Marion out, and there's some more fun sequences. I think the production designer or the set decorator was the actual Nazi who was flying the plane, or who was going to fly the plane.
Okay, cool.
And they just didn't have anyone extra, and he said he would do it. Then they actually get into the best sequence, and that's the chase sequence, where Indy is jumping from some trucks. We get to see Belloc, and we get to see all the other Nazis jump around. There's one part where Indy gets shot in his arm.
Right.
And I remember my brother and I always pointing this out when we were kids. He gets accidentally shot or I guess not accidentally, I guess they were trying to shoot him, and it like skims his arm, and then one of the other Nazis jumps in the car and just starts punching his bullet wound, and it's very funny to see him react to that.
Is it funny? You find it funny?
I think it's very funny. I think this whole sequence is very funny, actually.
Really? Okay. Why so?
I think just the over-the-top reaction he has. Obviously, he's dealing with a bullet wound, but
no, I can see it.
I mean, I take the whole thing as just another slapstick comedy bit, and it's funny, but it's also like very tense, very extreme. You see him when he's on the front of the truck, and the truck, what do you call that on the front of the car?
Oh, the
head plate, or no,
the ornament.
Yes, yeah. the head ornament. And he's he's holding on to it for dear life, and it just starts slowly bending back.
Right.
And then obviously him actually with the whip on the back of the car or the truck, rolling through the dirt, which Harrison Ford, of course, knowing him, he actually did it.
Did he actually do it?
He actually did it. He had stuntmen, but I don't think his stuntmen make a lot of money because they don't do a lot of the work.
Wow.
He's always doing his own stunts.
Was it actually him, though, going underneath the truck?
I'm sure it was. I mean, there was footage of them filming the whole sequence, which took them, I think they said 6 to 8 weeks to film the entire sequence.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's about 15 minutes worth of the movie, which I believe is the only part of the movie that's not directed by Spielberg. I think that was his assistant director who did the entire chase sequence.
Oh, so it was all second unit.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is very common. I mean, that happens in movies all the time. And obviously, Spielberg was saying that he was more excited to see the dailies of the chase sequence instead of the dailies he was filming at that same time, because he was so excited to see how it was turning out. And this was a big point of like, this whole movie was storyboarded perfectly. So obviously every movie has to do storyboarding. And I bring it up now because I remember seeing actual pictures from this sequence storyboarded. But they did a very in-depth job on keeping, this is how we want to do it. This is what we're going to show. And it's great stuff. So yeah, he does the whole chase sequence, and then they get to the island.
Yeah, they end up on the submarine.
That's right.
He poses as a Nazi in another funny moment. Yeah,
another great sequence when the Nazi starts talking to him, trying to get him to clean up. Yeah, and he punches him, and his hat flies in the air, and he catches the hat.
Yep,
amazing.
Great. I never realized how much comedy was in this film until I discussed it with you.
Yeah. It really is a very funny movie. And I think especially having someone as famously as a straight man Harrison Ford is, being able to play physical humor like this is very important, and what makes it even more funny. So at this point in the movie, they're on the submarine, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or are they on the boat?
They are on the boat.
Okay.
I think we said submarine initially, but we were mistaken. They're on the boat, and we have the famous scene between Marion and Indy where she starts kissing different parts of him. But before that, we have more comedy because the mirror.
The mirror.
She turns the mirror over and it whacks him in the face.
Yes. It's hilarious.
Was that planned?
Something like that, where it's so. I guarantee you, probably what happened was that happened accidentally in a take, and they redid it 4 more takes.
Okay.
But it's probably something that was still considered improv. Which,
okay.
I mean, it's very funny.
Yeah, the scream. It cuts to the boat, like a far shot, like a wide shot of the boat, and you just hear his scream. Yeah. And it's so funny.
But essentially they're arguing because he's in so much pain. He's all sore and beat up because, he pretty much rode the back of a truck on the hard dirt for God knows how many miles. And he's just all bruised up. And he says, "Oh, this hurts here. It hurts there." And she says, "Well, where doesn't it hurt?" Points at his elbow, points at his shoulder. And she would kiss him on the elbow, kiss him on the shoulder, and then kiss him on the lips at the end, which very romantic scene, very out of the ordinary for this movie, but it's very genuine.
It is.
It's a strange bit of romance that really is just pure romance to it. And somehow it works perfect for it.
Yeah.
And I like that they don't linger on too much of anything. They just they show it. And, for any other movie, this would have been the most beautiful scene that stole the whole movie. But for this, it probably comes in 15th of the best scenes of the whole movie.
That just shows how great of a film it is.
That's right.
But then we get to the submarine.
Yes. There's a great shot of the boat stops, I guess, and he looks outside, and the submarine's just sitting there. And there's another great gag that's so funny, where the Nazis board the boat, full of pirates, technically, and Indy has to hide, and he hides in the smoke tower on the boat, or I guess that's what you would call it.
Does he?
Yeah, remember? And all the Nazis are standing on deck, and they're all doing the interrogation. His head's just popped out, and you can hear the squeaking the entire time because he's sitting in there.
I didn't know this.
And you can literally hear squeaking because he's just trying to keep himself up. And there's one Nazi standing in front of there, and he's smoking a cigarette, and Indy's head is just popped up right behind him looking. And at the very end, the Nazi just turns around and he has to pop his head down and he just throws the cigarette down in there. So funny.
I got to watch that scene again because this is not ringing a bell for me. But...
It's a great scene. And again, it's just a really quick little scene. But I guess this is where he sneaks onto the submarine, right?
Right. I know we see, or I should say the captain of the boat sees him on top of the submarine and then the whole crew cheers.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
So we see him on the sub, but he rides it all the way to the island?
So I guess he technically rides the whole thing, the top of it, which just sounds miserable.
It does.
But, through what he had just been through, I think it's a luxury.
Ooh, that salt water all over his road burns. Okay.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that too much.
And then we get to the island where what was filmed in the exact same spot was the part where R2-D2 gets taken by the Jawas.
Really?
Yeah, it's the exact same location.
So that means they filmed the island, or the island bits were filmed in Tunisia.
Okay, there it is.
Okay. I know something.
So essentially, when the Nazis are going out with the Ark to go take it to the whatever they were going to do the ceremony at, and Indy's up on the hill, and he's dressed as a Nazi, but he's got the rocket launcher pointed at him.
Yes.
That's where they filmed it. It was the same place. Indy threatens to pretty much blow up the whole thing, gives the whole spiel about bringing this to your Führer and all this, but then they pretty much have their whole ritual to open the Ark. Everyone's disappointed. It's just sand and ghouls, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, so obviously what happens is Indy and Marion are tied up in the back of this location, which is a really cool location set that they have. And they do this whole ritual where Belloc's just dressed to the nines. And you have everyone around. You have pretty much the trifecta of villains up there. You have the head Nazi. You have the, I guess, Nazi archaeologist. And then you have Belloc.
Hans Mole Man,
that's right.
Yep.
And they do the ritual. Everyone's recording. I think it's really funny to see them just like recording with like little Nazi cameras.
They turned it into like a little film set.
Yeah. It's very funny. And they open the Covenant and it's just sand. And then all of a sudden, all this commotion happens. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say that the ghouls are actually done practically.
Really?
I know it looks pretty bad. And it's the one thing that I think looks pretty bad in the movie. Obviously, it's just aged the way it has. I think it probably looked fine then, but it just has aged poorly. when all the lightning comes out and starts just kind of killing all the Nazis. But there's that one scene where we see, I guess, this ghostly figure kind of show up, and
it's beautiful at first.
it is. It presents itself as a beautiful woman, and then it turns its face into
like a skeleton, almost, or
a
something.
Ghoul. I would say a ghoul.
A hideous ghoul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say that was done in camera, or at least it's partially done in camera, where it's a water trick that they did, with some kind of film imagery where they would, I guess, dual paste the film over each other, and there was something with running it through water, and it made it look like it was floating.
Okay.
There was something else about actually like floating sheets in through water to get that effect.
That's cool. I gotta look that up.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's 1980s effects, so
yeah. I mean, still great, even if it's a little bit dated.
I would much rather have that than most things I see today.
Right.
But yeah, essentially they open the Covenant. Indy realizes they need to keep their eyes closed, because the power of God is not meant for men's eyes. And then, obviously, you get the incredible practical effects of everybody's head just turning into Play-Doh.
Yeah.
And then Belloc, of course, just...
Yep, head explodes with flames in front of it.
With flames, that's right.
To keep it at PG.
Great effects.
Yeah.
Genuinely just some of the best effects that I've seen. I love that it's practical. I love watching it every time. I think they use like real wax figures, right? And they just literally burn them to melt them all.
Yeah.
And it looks great still today. It still looks a little raunchy, but that's just the charm of it.
That is okay.
Yeah, that's the charm.
We love it.
Yeah, and then Covenant closes. Another bad effect of the Ark of the Covenant's lid flying up into the air as the clouds part and some kind of beam of light goes up into the sky, and then shuts, and the lid falls down to Earth and hits the Covenant and seals it back up. And that's pretty much it. Then they're done. They don't need to deal with the Covenant anymore.
But how did Indy and Marion get untied?
No idea.
I always wondered that. I was hoping you'd have an explanation for me.
He's a very crafty guy, you know.
He thought of something.
I'm sure that they just didn't tie it well enough, and I'm sure, I don't know. I really can't tell you. I don't think that's anything that they really bothered to look through too much.
Interesting. All right, well, they break free. They go home. We have my favorite line. We have top men working on it.
Well, before that, he's essentially... actually, no, you're right. It's, where are you keeping the Covenant? It's with top men. It's like, who? It says top men.
Top men.
And then we see... I love this scene because it's out of the normal. He's wearing, I guess, black and gray, but he's still dressed like Indiana Jones.
That's right. He's
got a fedora that's a lot like this one. And Marion pretty much is consoling him because he's so upset. Says they don't know what they have and this and that. And we see the Ark of the Covenant get boxed up and brought into this enormous warehouse. Which, do you know what that warehouse is actually supposed to be?
Isn't it like Area 51?
It is, and they prove that in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And that's it. They roll credits, and that's it. That's the movie. And that goes down in history as one of the absolute greatest start-offs to any franchise ever.
What would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
10.
10?
I mean, genuinely, I would give it more. This is just my whole childhood. This is... Not only is it my own childhood, it's just an absolute marvel of filmmaking. Being able to... I guess I don't know about you. With me, if I'm watching a movie and they do something and I can say, oh, I know how they did that. I can see how they did that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not talking about like being able to see the wires or anything, but like you see a practical effect, like the face is melting and you're like, oh, I know how they did that. That's a lot of fun for me. And this whole movie, this whole franchise is just made up of moments where I just say, I can see that. Yeah. I could do that. Things like that are a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. Yeah.
This movie was also an enormous success when it came out. It was in theaters for over a year.
Was it really? Wow.
We're lucky to get movies to stay in theaters for more than 2 months now.
Yeah.
Gone with the Wind also back then, no one had anything else better to do than go to the movies, so they all
True.
kept movies in theaters longer, which obviously that was years and years and years before. But yeah, this movie was in theaters for, I think, something like 13 months.
It's a long time.
Yeah, and it pretty much stayed number one for most of that time, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, very.
Obviously, it didn't win Best Picture, but it won in the box office.
It won in the box office, and
it won in our hearts.
And at the end of the day, that's the most important part.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just. I think it's the birth of probably one of the coolest on-screen heroes we've ever gotten.
Right.
Like we've already mentioned, I think the sequel, or technically the prequel, Temple of Doom, kind of shows him less as a hero, but he does a lot of the things for the wrong reasons. But he is still technically a hero by the end of it.
Right.
Right.
But
this was the movie that birthed it, and it, I could never ask for anything more.
There you go.
Absolutely amazing movie.
A true 10 in your heart.
That's right. I mean, probably about a 15 out of 10, but
15 out of 10. You can give it a 15. Yeah. I will allow that.
How about you? Do you remember the first time you watched this movie?
I do. I was I think about 8 years old, and I watched it with my dad, and the scene that stands out to me the most is the chase sequence in Cairo. And
I'm sorry, you said how old were you?
I think I was about 8 years old or something. I went through a phase where I was like really, really into Star Wars, and I still am. I still am today. But my parents got to a point where they were like, he needs to watch some other stuff too. So they introduced me to Indiana Jones, and I watched them all with my dad. And yeah, great experience. And I've seen the film probably 10 times in my life so far. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9 out of a 10, but that's only because I reserve the rate or the score of a 10 for 3 films. Granted, Nick has seen way more films than I have, but for me, you know what? I'll let you know when I talk about the films that are 10s in my book. I'll keep that a secret for now.
I respect that a lot. I like that. I think I hand out 10 out of 10s a little way too much.
Gotta reserve the 10 for the really special ones.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. Can we also just go to Steven Spielberg for a minute? Just real quick.
Yeah, of course.
What was he doing in the 70s and 80s, man? He was just cooking.
He was.
I mean, he made my third favorite movie of all time, Jaws.
Yeah.
I think that's probably I was actually listening to a podcast about Raiders of the Lost Ark recently, and they said Jaws is the movie that created the blockbuster, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is the movie that perfected it. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it.
I like that.
But then you also keep looking at his career, and he made Jurassic Park. I mean, that's one of the biggest blockbusters of all time.
And the guy never went to film school.
No.
It's amazing.
Most of those guys never went to film school, too.
Stanley Kubrick, I don't think he went to film school.
Tarantino.
Peter Jackson didn't go to film school.
Tarantino.
My
favorite. Scorsese, I don't think ever went to film school.
Film school's overrated. Apparently.
That's the whole takeaway from this podcast.
Apparently. Apologies to my friend Robert, who currently is attending film school, but you'll turn out great, buddy. I have no doubt. But yeah, Spielberg, just a genius.
If you listen to him in podcasts, or just in interviews, he's just a wealth of knowledge too.
Yeah.
He just, he knows a lot of those old 40s, 50s, 30s movies, and like we've been talking about in this podcast, it all shows.
It does.
You get a lot of that Charlie Chaplin stuff. You get a lot of the old Robert Mitchum stuff, some of the Paul Newman stuff, the suave of all the guys. And it's perfect. And he's just so smart, and he's so on top of what he wants, while also still being apparently a very down-to-earth, cool guy.
I've heard that.
Seeing him in the documentary I was watching about this movie, he just seemed like a regular old goofball.
Yeah.
And I guess he was the reason that Harrison Ford decided to sign on for the trilogy, because he said, I know who I'm working with is him and Lucas, and I just think they're great guys. So
yeah, I think Harrison Ford even said he was hesitant to sign on for 3 films. But as you just said, I mean, he liked the script, but also, he knew who he would be working with, and that kind of, made the difference for him.
absolutely.
Yep, we have a lot to thank Steven Spielberg for, and George Lucas as well. Now, see, George Lucas went to film school, and he's a weak director. I had to throw that out there, kind of put a bow on everything.
He's an idea guy. He's got the ideas. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Mace Windu, and that's just the peak of cinema actors.
Gotta love Mace Windu.
And then, of course, he did American Graffiti as well, which actually is a very fun movie. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've not seen it, but you would recommend it?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's obviously it's his most normal movie, that's for sure.
Right,
now,
right.
Of course, he really isn't actually that big of a director in general. He's done those 2 movies, the first Star Wars and then the prequels, and how much more? I don't know if he actually did much more after that.
Don't know if he's directed anything else.
Big producer, though. Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a billion-dollar company right there.
All right, Nick, do you have anything else?
If you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing?
Yeah,
what's
why are
going
you
on?
watching this?
Yeah,
go watch the film.
It's definitely what created modern Hollywood. It's part of it. So it's something to go see. Still holds up today. Still will always be one of my favorites. Favorite franchise, that's for sure.
Fantastic film. Definitely up there for me in terms of my favorite franchises. It's his number 1. Thank you for attending this Saga session. We hope to see you again soon.